Next order of business is roll call of members. Please indicate your presence when the machine is open. If all the members voted, tally roll.
Well, it's Sessions, episode 3. We are still here. And I think that's a good thing. We've made it through. And what's really special about this episode, before I mention who our guest is, which is actually the best part of this, is it took 3 episodes, but Earl is not wearing a tie today. And so I think we're making progress towards the more unbuttoned, casual Earl, still with a pocket square. But Earl, I was starting to feel a little uncomfortable. So I did bring you one just in case. It's not going to match the way that...
If I start shaking, I can put this on?
Yeah, if you start to really go into withdrawals, I understand you needing to take a moment to do a triple Windsor or whatever
double
really
latte,
fancy thing
mixy thing
you did.
Exactly.
Okay, well, I'm excited because our guest today is the indubitable Dr. Victoria Garcia.
Do you know what indubitable
Wilburn.
means?
I overuse it. I really do, but I mean it. I mean it.
It's your word of the day.
That's right. Dr. Garcia Wilburn is the representative for District 32, and one of the reasons we wanted to have you on today was because when we met last week, you were our first repeat guest. I mean, unless you count Earl, who somehow has become from guest to taking control.
Does that mean you're going to kick me out next week?
Never.
You know what? I see your evil plan now, Blake.
Listen,
Strategy.
Everything's intentional, brother. Everything's intentional. You came on last season, and one of the things I remember you saying was that your goal was to learn and to listen. And it appears from the outside that you learned and listened very well, because in your first session, you were able to pass legislation.
Yeah.
And so I think part of what we want to do here is celebrate that, because that's a pretty extraordinary,
Thank you.
pretty extraordinary thing. So why don't you tell us what that bill was?
Yes, House Bill 1321. I don't think I'll ever forget that. This bill actually provides mental and behavioral health training, suicide prevention to all public safety officials, like in their professional capacity. So as part of their yearly requirements, they'll receive mental health and suicide prevention training, and the chiefs and administration will also receive how to recognize distress and perhaps suicidal ideation among their rank and file, which is really phenomenal. And we actually joined one of 7 states that has kind of similar legislation like this. We all at this point understand how important mental health is, and it is even more critically important for our first responders. The sights and the scenes that they witness every day are, 20-fold what we would see in our lifetime. And that statistic is probably too low now that I'm saying that out loud. But just the testimonies and support that I heard from that community really took me aback. Mm-hmm. I'm talking of leaders in the industry, from chiefs of police to chiefs of fire to FOP and Indiana Professional Firefighters Union, all coming to testify and said at some point in their profession they struggled with their mental health. And that is huge when we talk about eliminating the stigma to mental health. And so honestly, it's what I felt was going to be my life's work. I didn't think that we'd get it done in one session, but I think when you have something good, people want to be a part of it. And so this bill kind of passed through both chambers unanimously, and it was just a really kind of an all-encompassing feeling when you're sitting at the governor's desk. Yeah. I mean, when you asked me, your first session, et cetera, I had no idea that's how it would culminate, signing by myself. And then obviously Senator Kreider, who has been doing mental and behavioral health work long before me, and to have him by my side was just incredible. So yeah, everything else after this will be a cherry on top, because I feel like I've done what I has set out to do.
Earl, you've been around a while. And this doesn't happen very often, right? Can you just speak to the effectiveness of a first-time member, first session, getting something to the governor's desk?
It does shows skill and ability, and it goes back to something we've talked about here, which is that whole relationship thing. And so, for someone to walk in their first year and get a bill passed is pretty amazing. I think on average it takes 7 years.
No.
And so I think on average it takes a bill 7 years. You work.
Yeah.
But for you to do it in 1 year, that's a great accomplishment. And congratulations.
Thank you.
And you just made us look bad, but thanks.
You got one passed last year too. I don't know.
Yeah.
I also got got one past my first year, but I didn't want to bring that up.
There you go.
Hey, listen,
See?
this show's not about us. The show's about us. Victoria, one of the things I was hoping you'd kind of reveal for us, one of the goals of the podcast is to kind of peel back the curtain a bit on the legislature. Yeah. What went into making it happen? I mean, first of all, it was the big, bold idea that was good and noble, right?
Thanks.
What else went into it? Because it's not easy. What you did was not easy. And what Earl did, come on, man, just let it be hers. All right?
It is all about her.
What went into it?
No, I mean, honestly, I think my skill set as like a community engaged researcher, as a clinician, as an occupational therapist, all those skills kind of came into play. So when I was practicing clinically, I'd have to walk into a patient's room and immediately find something in common with them. Immediately try to earn their trust, because I'm going to ask them to do pretty vulnerable things, which is honestly some of the most devastating times for them. They've just had a stroke, they just had an amputation, suffered a cardiac arrest, like really life-changing things. And here comes this therapist walking in saying, let's get you out of bed for the first time. Let's get you into the shower for the first time. Let's see how your walking skills are. All those things that, you have to develop rapport very quickly. And so when I was kind of just figuring out how to develop relationships, I really relied on those skills. Approaching the chairman for the first time, seeing that he was retired firefighter. That's a similarity. We both come from public safety families, right? Having to garner the support of the director of Homeland Security. He was, on the force with my husband, and so they served at the same time. And so trying to find those similarities, and quite honestly, in this day and age, I think we really focus on the differences and we forget that we have so much in common. And it is listening and learning and like hearing those nuances and saying, we have that in common. And so that helped really develop relationships and trust across the aisle really rapidly. And I don't take that for granted. I really don't. But I really think that my skills as a researcher and clinician are what helped me develop those relationships probably a little bit sooner. I just didn't feel threatened because when you're a healthcare provider, you're entering rooms with all walks of life. Yeah. I mean, people that look like you, people that don't look like you, people that have different opinions, people that you've never encountered before, and you have to find something in common with them. And so that was part of my strategy, is just kind of operating in a really humanistic way.
We've talked about strategy on here, and you brought up something I don't think we've discussed yet. We have the 100 representatives, the 50 senators, and the whole relationships and working that. You just brought up something that brings another piece to it, which is having people that aren't a member of the legislature sign on, and then they actually help you lobby and get a bill heard and get a bill passed. Yeah. That's an important role and an important skill set to have.
Oh, well, thank you. I mean, I definitely didn't go at it with that intention, but as a community engaged researcher, you recognize that the people that it impacts, so the community problem, those are the experts. And you're just the connector, finding the pieces that are matching together to help solve the problem. They're the ones with the knowledge and the power. Yeah. And so when I would come into a room, I would really make sure that there was no power dynamic. I'm this first year freshman, no lobbyists were paying attention to me, right? So any work that I wanted to do, I needed to do on my own. And so it just required a lot of time, a lot of intention. And I guess I just didn't anticipate that it would move so fast like it did, but it did.
No pressure for next session at all to get something done.
No, I just think when you focus on the things that you're intrinsically passionate about, it doesn't feel labor intensive. Like, I genuinely feel passionate about certain things that I think are reflective of my district and my community, things that I've heard, stories that I've heard, people that I've met with, whether they have a position, like a formal position in my community or not, like their voice matters to me. Yeah. And so when I can think about that person, that's what drives me. So I think when your passions are all aligned, it really doesn't feel like work. I genuinely enjoy being in the legislature, and I think that's probably a real mind-blowing thing for people.
Well, let's talk about your district and the area you represent. So tell people what that looks like. What is the community represented by Dr. Garcia Wilburn?
Yeah, so my community is made up of, I think, 3 very, very similar situated communities. So I represent half the community of Fishers, so Delaware Township, that's in Hamilton County, Southwestern Clay Township, and Carmel, also in Hamilton County, and then a very small portion of the Nora community in Indianapolis, and that's where actually I reside. We have a lot of things in common. common. Those three communities do. High, medium income levels, high educational attainment levels, strong investment in public schools. And so being able to like represent and say like across these three cities, it's really, we have very similar agendas, and people are surprised to hear that. I think, people have this assumption if you drive across 96th Street, all of a sudden the values change, and that's just not true. So I'm the first Democrat to actually have a Hamilton County suburb by their name in a really long time. So it says like D. Fishers, and so I'm really proud of that, and I think that speaks to my collaborative nature. I have a great relationship with city leaders. I meet with all three of my mayors on a semi-regular basis, and that helps, keep me relevant to what's important to the district. And I think that's just important. I think it's important to have good relationships with people, because at the end of the day, you want your community to be the best.
Well, and representing parts of Fishers and Carmel, I mean, it's got to be tough because there's not a lot of growth, not a lot happening there. So it's really on you to kick it up a notch.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just a fan of regional development, right? And I think we're all finally starting to speak that language in central Indiana. So I love the regional things that are happening on the 96 corridor between Indianapolis and Fishers. I love the things that are happening collaboratively between Carmel and Fishers on 116th Street. And so there is so much growth, and I think it's a great time for there to be a lot of people at the tables, just so that we can all gut check ourselves that it's the right growth, that it's the intentional growth, and it's the growth that's going to benefit the most households.
Good. One of the things I have also seen you do when you talk about your community outreach is town halls, which you're literally right there with the voters, getting your constituents, getting them to ask you questions and giving them great information.
Yeah.
So that's also a vital part. I do want to kind of switch gears a little bit, and let's focus a little bit on the 2024 session.
Sure.
So we're in that. Tell us about some of the legislation that you've authored.
Yeah, so for 24, I'm really kind of situating myself in harm reduction. And so that's a term that's used in the public health community. A lot of people aren't aware that every time you put on your seatbelt, that's a form of harm reduction. Every time you wear your bike helmet to go on a bike ride, that's harm reduction. So I'm really situated in harm reduction when it comes to recovery. That's also kind of a huge passion of mine. A lot of my research is in recovery communities, and there's some things that are a bit of a barrier in our state that really don't have to be. So nothing that's really rocking the table, but we're going to clarify the language on fentanyl test strips, and I have a huge amount of support in that in the House, and I'm excited to carry that forward. I've actually seen that be a barrier to people in the recovery community, because that can be interpreted different ways across the state. So that's really meaningful to me. And then also to extend the Lifeline law. And so the Lifeline law is really meant to serve our 21 and under population when it comes to alcohol intoxication. And it was essentially birthed out of my district, a tragic story that happened to a family in Carmel where a teenager was with their friends and just didn't call. They were scared of the repercussions of having alcohol when they were not of age yet. And so this day and age, we have to recognize that it's just no longer alcohol that's at the table. It could be illegal substances. And fentanyl is rampant in our state, unfortunately, and I don't want teenagers' curiosity to kill them. I know far too many families that have lost their child due to an accidental overdose that we want people to call. And so we really want to put that in alignment. And I've worked really hard to get the language right in this. It would still include some of the diversion pathways that exist for the alcohol. And it would still really trying to be mindful of keeping those dealer laws strong and intact, because we still want dealers to be penalized for dealing. And so, it really just intentional authorship around that. And so I'm excited to put that forward. I think there might be some legs there. As you know, getting a hearing is going to be difficult, right? And so it's a short session. And so those are the two things that I really want to focus on. I also have a fantastic bill in partnership with one of my Republican co-authors who's a nurse practitioner as well. And it's about scoliosis prevention with pediatric providers. So we've done away with scoliosis testing in schools about a decade ago. And some kids, especially those on the fringes, have been missed out. And the recovery to scoliosis surgery is grueling, and it's actually something that we don't do very often here, but is necessary for people. As you age, scoliosis can impact your internal organs detrimentally, and so I heard a story from actually Miss at Indiana Teen, who I know you got to meet.
got to meet her, yeah.
And she just came really impassioned about this, and so I'm happy to author that legislation. She would love for me to call it the Keegan Cares Bill, which is really adorable, and I just want to see that kind of move in this really nice bipartisan fashion. So I have some other things that I'm still kind of TBD in regards to really empowering DCS to do their job and making sure that everybody knows what the rules of that job are. Some things happened over this summer that really kind of unveiled that maybe we need some very clear things in the books when it comes to mandated reporting. So that might be something that might be there. I've been working with Representative Green for a special education bill because we lost so much funding for our autism population. So just some things that I haven't really tweaked out yet, all really good things. We have a 5-bill limit, so I don't know what's going to sneak in there. But really, this is kind of like the year of healthcare for me. So we'll see what happens.
This is an important point. We mentioned on previous episodes, 5-bill limit. That's the first time it's been said. Short sessions, there are limitations on how many bills can be filed. Otherwise, well, let's just say there would be a lot of bills, right?
Yeah.
So long sessions, 10 is your limit. Short sessions, 5 is the limit. So you've got to make some prioritization of how things go. I guess I'd want to ask, coming into your second session, surely some expectations have shifted, your experience. Like what have you kind of learned from that first go of it being in the General Assembly?
This will probably sound crazy, but I think just how important camaraderie is. I think the work that we do is, it obviously means something. It means something to us. I know the three of us sitting at this table, and it can be really stressful because you're really at the end of the day thinking about how you're going to be impacting people's lives. And I take that real seriously. So I think the best thing that came out, obviously the bill signing, but the other thing that came out of it was just a sense of camaraderie with some of my colleagues. That is just, it means a lot to me to know that I can go to a friend and say, like, I'm struggling today, or like, I need some words of encouragement today, or to help me think about how to tackle a problem differently and give me strategy and expertise. Obviously, I'm still learning a lot, but I just think that's really important, just to kind of keep sense of like who you are, and keep that balance, and keep, checking your integrity, and just kind of having fun along the way too, because you got to have opportunities to blow off steam and laugh, and just that helps you do your work better too.
There's an important prism here, right? Like these are jobs that are public, jobs that can be high profile for good and for bad. But what's interesting is at the end of the day, it's still a workplace. It's still an office. It's still coworkers. Like there's a lot about this gig that I think people don't get to see because of just how controlled the environment can be and the way news works and all of that. I mean, what do you think? I mean, you've built incredible friendships over the years. What role does that play for you?
Well, it does. I mean, when you walk into this situation, sometimes people think because we're state representative, whatever, that we know everything, we know how to do everything. And the reality is we don't. And it's always smart. You've done something. Again, that smart is tap into other people's experience. And sometimes it's as simple as, okay, here's what I want to do. What suggestions do you have? That person will give you suggestions. And if they're on the other side of the aisle, in our case, being a Republican, since we're Democrats, there's also the ability or the impact of them going, let me help you with that. I'm going to go talk to so-and-so. I'm going to talk to the chairperson and get that across the line. So that's a great skill that you've gained. And it's something that we as Democrats in the super minority really have to figure out how to do, and if we're going to be successful, because we all know the way the math works, we can't get a bill passed on Democrat votes. We don't have enough. We really don't have enough. So we have to get Republicans engaged. And that's a big deal, and that's a big part of why you've been successful.
Thanks.
All right. So we've talked about, and we've asked about, what are your expectations and thoughts in reference to the 2024 session and how it's going to go?
Oh, that's a big question. So you're giving me...
We're big question askers.
You're giving me a crystal ball, essentially, right? It's a difficult time not just in our country right now. Obviously, we're preparing for a presidential election. So you always feel the weight of that too. People in their minds have a very difficult time separating federal government with state government.
Yes.
And so that, I think, can be tricky. And then also, we're just at a very interesting time, a very sobering time in our world. And so, something that I've really been focusing on lately is thinking about, like, how are the things that are happening out there affecting my district in here? And so I just hope we can all stay focused on, like, the work that we have to do for Hoosiers. And the things that Hoosiers want and the things that Hoosiers value. I mean, there's a litany of things that we can improve here. Like, don't even have to touch a national or global headline. Like, there are several things that impact our daily lives here. So I want to see, like, a return to that good work. And you've heard, like, the leadership say, like, they want this to be a session that doesn't have much conflict, right? And so I'm like, that's the best way to do it. Like, let's focus on the real kitchen table things that impact our households, and let's leave the rest of the stuff to the other branches of government, the other forms of government, federal and our world leaders. Let's let them, develop those things, and let's stay focused on our strategies and what matters to us here. So I'm just hopeful that we can, at the end of the day, come back to that we're working for people in our state, and even at the very hyper level, working for people in our districts. And so, yeah, that's my hope. I think that's probably naive of me, but I'm still green, right? So I can be hopeful.
You can play that card.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, we know we're going to have, session's always going to have some sort of controversy. I mean, it would be great if it was all smooth and easy. We know the third grade reading thing has been discussed.
Yeah.
So we'll just have to see how this plays out. And then we, on the Democrat side, hopefully we can get some movement in terms of what we can get done, as you've talked about.
Yeah. Gosh, and just to talk about the third grade reading, I mean, I'm seeing some pieces of legislation being filed that talk about, again, kind of delegitimizing teaching as a profession. Like, anybody can do it. Like, that is so wrong.
Yeah.
And if we continue to devalue the profession of teaching, what you'll see as far as the output of our students' performance should not be a surprise to anybody. And so when we invest in our teachers, we're investing in our students. When we're regaining the professionalism of teachers, we're increasing the standards for our students. There's so much that goes into learning. And, just kind of paired with mental health, like, traumatized brains can't learn. And so I think about the violence because of loose gun laws that we have here in our state that now children are exposed to at a more frequent level. That impacts their learning. Hungry bellies, that impacts their learning. And so we have to think about reading holistically. We have to think about people holistically, and not try to silo things that aren't meant to be siloed.
Yeah, we've talked about the amount of money that potentially it's going to cost the state if we hold back thousands and thousands of students versus putting those funds into summer school or tutoring
100%.
To get students where they need to be.
Right.
That to me seems like a better use of the funds.
Yeah, rich after school activities, free breakfast, free lunch, all of those things play into learning. And, we didn't talk about the other arm of kind of who I am. I'm as an educator, right? And I, teach doctoral students on the campus of IU Indianapolis. And I've seen how COVID has affected doctoral students, right? So, like, some social skills, soft skills that they would learn as undergraduates didn't get a chance to be exercised or, grown because of COVID. And so we're really having to think about how we're teaching healthcare providers after COVID. It's different. And so for our youngest learners that missed critical learning in kindergarten and first grade and second, and I'm a mom that's been impacted by that. So our current fifth graders are actually the most impacted grade. So when you think about reading levels that we're looking a year back at, those are kids that were affected by COVID tremendously. So we can't just brush over that and say, oh, we're surprised or this is awful. Actually, this is the evidence and it's displaying itself, and this is what it looks like, right? And so that's why it's so important to have a lot of different people as part of the legislature. So, I'm a professor, healthcare provider. You guys bring, your professional expertise. We need so many diverse opinions to kind of gut check people or offer them different strategies and solutions along the way.
And you found that to be true, right? I mean, we do rely on each other's expertise.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about the camaraderie, like, within the group who you can reach out to who has a degree of agency around certain topics. Like Earl's mentioned a couple times now, we don't have to know everything because while campaigning is a solo sport, governing is a team sport. And I think the team does a pretty good job of leaning on one another.
Yeah, and it really does. That the fact that we are a citizen legislature and everyone has different experiences, everyone has different careers, really adds to that. I know that I remember asking you a question about healthcare during this session because you're the expert on that, and I'm not a healthcare professional in any way. So just tapping into everyone else's brains is really a vital part of this for me.
Agree.
For all of us, I hope.
Yep.
And that that she did call us professionals. That's probably the first time that's happened.
I haven't said it about yet. We've been here 3 times. I mean, you're close.
Well, I'm glad our guest did.
Yeah. Well, you take that tie off, you kind of lose a little bit of the ethos.
Man, now I got to bring the tie back. No pressure.
Dr. Garcia Wilburn, Doc, as we often call you. What has been the thing that's surprised you most about your service so far? I mean, and I'm coming at that question from the fact having a big win the first year, something you care a lot about, but just overarching, what's kind of blowing your doors off?
Yeah. I mean, I think when you're a citizen looking inside about how things work, you're like, government moves so slow. Like, it moves so slow. But when you're in there, it moves so fast. And as Earl said, it takes oftentimes several iterations of something to get it just right? But that work happens fast. The meetings that happen in the interim, the committees, the commissions, everything is just like, there is not an off switch. And if you allow this to just continue to, it'll keep going with you, it'll snowball with you. So people warned me about this is going to be very, your life's about to change, the time consuming, the commitments, the calls on the weekend, everything. And I was like, yeah, I'm really busy now, so I know how to handle busy. And now I'm every time I see people that said that to me, I'm like, you were so right, and I was so foolish, because it has been a new way of doing, and it makes me appreciate things on a whole. Honestly, this has been the best thing for me because it's helped me appreciate all of the mundane things a lot. So being on time in the car line pickup at school, I appreciate that. Getting a date in with my husband that's not tied to a political activity, I appreciate that. Being home on the weekends when my kids come home and I'm the first person they see when they walk through the door. I have 2 teenage daughters. I appreciate that now. And so I think in a weird way, it has been such a great gift for me to be able to represent because it's honestly changed my life. And I hope that along the way, I'm helping other people change their lives and maybe, inspiring along the way. But it does take a village. And I used to have trouble asking for help before, and I don't now because I know that I need it.
It's a really beautiful thing to think about because we spend, all day, 12 to 14 hours a day, 4 days a week, talking about really big issues, really heavy issues. I mean, the stuff you've shared that you've been working on, I mean, that's not stuff that doesn't chip away at your soul to hear stories and whatnot. So you have that, and then at some point you go home and you go back to normal life, and sometimes that's a jarring transition. So it's kind of wonderful the idea of finding a way to really love it, right?
Yeah,
to go back to the
I mean, no one will check your ego like teenage girls.
Yeah. I remember being a teenage boy, and that was definitely my experience. Yeah. Also, my wife does a pretty good job of humbling me when I walk in the door.
Look what you've become.
Yeah.
The teenage girls.
That's right.
Wait a minute, that sounds weird.
They're oh man, getting beat up was enough, I guess.
Well, and it's one of the things also. We kind of joke about it, but it is serious. Sometimes it takes having your family and friends who are like, chill, this is real life now.
Right.
This is not the life of a legislator. You need to do family stuff. You need to hang out with your friends. You need to go out on dates that you talked about.
Yeah.
All those things keep us sane so that our heads don't explode from everything we deal with when we're at the State House.
Well, and each other too, right? I mean, I think the beauty of the floor sometimes being the House floor, not laying on the floor. Sometimes I do that at the end of the week. But being on the floor is like, we are all bunched together. And so sometimes when something's happening, you can just turn around. Like, Victoria sits kind of right behind me. I can turn over and just say something to her, and like little words of encouragement, sometimes you'll see a member text on the floor, and oftentimes that's just like, great job in that speech. Like, man, you really represented well. Like those little things I think really speak to the job in a kind of unique way.
Yeah. It is part of that team effort and that team camaraderie is to give encouragement to everyone else. So I think that's part of it. We just have to make sure that we don't get lost too much in being a state representative to forget why we are a state representative.
Yeah. I mean, it's at the end of the day, I think for all of us, it's about the real issues that that inspired us to run, right? And so as this is like, we're coming up on all of our seats, right, this 24 season, it's like I'm anxious to see who is going to step up just in campaign roles, right? Because I mean, I think we all inspire people differently, and I hope we see so many new faces on the ballot because this should be accessible to everybody. Like you mentioned, it was meant to be a constituent or a citizen-led legislature for a reason, right? And so I would love to see more people from diverse backgrounds in every sense of the word come and feel empowered to put their name on a ballot.
So we're almost out of time. What would you like the constituents to know about you that they don't already know?
Actually, let's rephrase what you don't want them to know. Like, let's just spill some tea and just really
give us all the dirt.
Yeah, like what are your deepest, darkest secrets?
Yes, right here.
Yeah,
right.
This feels like a safe environment for that.
Nobody's
watching.
Yeah,
no one's listening.
We have no YouTube followers yet.
Oh, goodness. I'm kind of an open book to begin with. Like, I think that's both a blessing and a curse. Like, just, complete open book. So whatever. But gosh, I'm trying to think. Something that people probably don't. This is lame, but I'm going to share it. I know you're looking for something meaty.
No, I mean, listen. You are so much more interesting than either one of us.
No. I am not a morning person. Like, contrary to everybody's belief, because I am like one of the first ones in the State House. Like, sometimes I'm turning on the lights, right? But it is like, I am not, and my husband will tell you, I am not a morning person. So
good thing session starts in the afternoon.
Yeah, good thing. But I mean, it's like a chore for me. It's literally painful for me to get out of bed, go work out, like do some self-care, and then be there. Like if I'm not one of the first ones, I feel like my day I'm falling behind. So that's probably some sort of like neurotic trait that I have also tied to that, but I am not naturally a morning person, and it takes a tremendous amount of time, like 2.5, 3 hours of awake time before I'm actually enjoying another human being.
I have been the human being she's not enjoying. If we're being honest, because I walk right by Victoria's desk on the way to mine, and you come in and she's already in it. She's got her headphones in. She's on a Zoom. She's meeting with a constituent, and I'm like, "Hey, Victoria," and she's just locked in, no interest.
Is there a little growl that comes out the side of her mouth?
She's like, "All right, Blake, we love your dad jokes, but it's not time for that right now."
Sorry.
But that's good to know. So don't talk to Victoria in the morning.
No, talk to her.
Listen.
No, the takeaway, Earl, is absolutely go talk to her in the most enthusiastic way you possibly can.
Yeah, that's why Blake gets into trouble.
Every once in a while. Well, listen, Victoria, as a close friend of yours, I just am so proud of you. It's awesome serving with you. You are such a wonderful representative for your community and for the state. I mean, we are lucky to have you in the caucus, and we're lucky that you agreed to come back on and do this. So any final words, any words of encouragement for Earl? I think it's probably, he's had a really hard time without that tie on.
I know.
I've been trying to hold the shaking.
Yeah. I mean, I think what 2023 taught us is that tomorrow's not promised, right? So whatever you do it with gusto.
We'll end it there.
We'll end it there.
See you next time.